Today's guest is James White, former police officer, former prosecuting attorney, and I guess he still is a criminal defense attorney. So first of all, we have this statement here. This is from the form. So when you submit an episode to ATA, one of the questions we ask you is to basically characterize what happened in your own words. And I'll read this out loud for people who may not be able to see this on the screens. It says, "Hello, I'm a longtime viewer of your channel, and I believe that I have a compelling story that fits your content perfectly. In 2021, I was arrested in Clarksville, Arkansas, after a police officer's report alleged I was fleeing and messing with construction equipment. Body cam video evidence, as well as the written report, tell a very different story. We have the report as well. We'll take a look at after we watch the video. The initial stop was based on a flimsy premise, which the officer's report seems to embellish to justify a traffic stop. The charge of obstructing governmental operations was used after I refused to provide ID when no crime had been committed, raising questions about the legal basis for the arrest. There are significant demonstrable discrepancies between the officer's well-written narrative and the events captured on video. But here's the most powerful part of the story. Despite filing a lawsuit, I was unable to proceed because I had pled guilty to 2 of the 4 counts in a plea bargain. The case isn't just about a bad arrest. It is about how the legal system, through a plea, can validate an officer's actions and provide them with a shield against a civil suit, even when their initial conduct was questionable. I have obtained the police report and the video evidence, and I'm prepared to share them, and blah, blah, blah. He filed a petition to seal this arrest after 4 years, and that's basically his side of the story. Reading this, though, I'm curious about, he's saying that he pled to 2 of the charges, and that somehow negated his civil suit?
Sure. For instance, if McNeil, so in the McNeil case, McNeil pled guilty to driving on suspended license, which would have been discovered whether that's right, if the stop was lawful, right? He was still driving on suspended license. It wasn't anchored to the legality of the stop. He pled guilty to resisting without violence, which again is not anchored to the reason for the original stop. Had he pled guilty to the driving without headlights in the rain, it would bar his 1983 claim. If the 1983 claim was based on unlawful seizure. Right. So if I say that you unlawfully seized me, but then I plead guilty to the underlying offense, well, I don't have a civil rights claim. Right. Unless I can get that conviction thrown out.
Yeah. So I guess that would largely depend on which of these charges he pled to. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. All right. Well, here is the video. Sorry, I just started like that.
State was going to get out with a male in a red hoodie running from the equipment at Walmart. Now the male running across the parking lot.
Hey, man. Huh? You just exercising?
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting reports of people that keep breaking on the equipment.
No.
What's wrong?
Because I know you're bullshit. You're trying to ID me.
I kind of think he's bullshitting about exercising in jeans.
And a hoodie.
Yeah.
Where's this? Arkansas?
Yeah.
Where it's
actually
warm,
have some notes.
And it's October in Arkansas. Maybe.
Yeah, it's 10/26. So, I mean,
it's 2200. So it's 9:56 at night. Okay, let's continue. Let's see what else. I don't want to make too many.
You got your ID?
Yeah, I do, and you're not getting it.
Yes, I am.
For what?
I just made a contact with you. Give me your ID.
No.
Yes.
Nice.
You don't need my
He's
ID.
got earbuds.
So using an identifier. So.
Yeah, I did see that when I was making the thumbnail. I haven't watched this video. Just a preference for the chat, just so you know. I did edit out. I blurred a part as I scrolled through the timeline and noticed that his license came out at one point. So I did do that. So I haven't really watched this video, but I have seen it, I guess, is a way to say it.
What were you doing over there?
Over where?
By the equipment.
Is there a shortcut?
It's a shortcut?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have warrants or something?
No.
Then why aren't you on the ID yourself?
I don't have to.
Because listen,
I
pulled up here, was just going to get out with you, and you start running across the parking lot.
Okay, and?
That looks reasonable. That looks suspicious, man. I'm trying to get out with you. You're walking from the equipment, start running across the road when I try to get out with you.
That dead road over there? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
It's a shortcut.
Okay.
There ain't nothing wrong with being over there.
That's all I need to know.
All right, so I want to...
Is it, though? So that means you should turn the fuck around and go the other direction if that's all you need to know?
Yeah, but at the same time, so what I think we find out at some point is that they had or no, this was in the charges, which I think or the report, which we'll read later. But this town there's a bunch of heavy equipment parked next to this parking lot, and they had reports of people tampering or trying to steal it or whatever. And this guy is running away from that area. And I'm assuming what he's talking about here as a shortcut is probably some kind of road that runs parallel to wherever that equipment is. So it does, in my opinion, at least right now, seem like it's not unreasonable for the officer to think that that's strange, that someone's running away from this equipment where they've had reports before. And, obviously doesn't really look like a jogger when you just see him. I don't think that that's necessarily reasonable suspicion, but I think it's not unreasonable for this cop to at least be making contact.
I do think it's reasonable suspicion. I don't think it's a reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot.
Yeah, there you go.
I think we need more. I do think it's suspicious. I do think it's reasonable. I'm not sure that the third part of that is there yet.
Yeah, valid.
I'd need a little more context probably. But look, and the other thing I would say is, well, where's he getting his authority to police this parking lot from? Is there an agreement somewhere between the police department and these? Because again, at best, all you have suspicion of is trespassing. You don't even have attempted burglary. You don't have attempted theft. So what is your authority to investigate this? Where does it come from?
That's a good point.
Probably comes for your authority to investigate a trespass. And what do you need there? You need to be an agent, or you need to have somebody who's an agent who's vesting you with that. So again, there's a lot missing here, but I have a lot of questions.
It very well could be the case that there is a public parking area of some kind where this equipment is that we don't see in the video.
Well, here's the other thing that could be at play. They could have very well gotten the calls from the people who've had stuff broken into over there saying, hey, we need extra patrols in this area. That was a thing that happened all the time. We need extra patrols in this area to have an officer come by here. And they may have asked these guys to do this exact thing.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Very well could have been. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier about there being potentially some kind of agreement, that's something that people don't realize is actually a pretty regular thing.
Sure.
A lot of private parking lots, especially in like a place like Walmart or any other kind of strip mall that has multiple businesses, there's almost always at least some kind of verbal agreement with the police that you can come here, you can do whatever you need to, you can enforce whatever. We'd like you to keep people out of here, that kind of thing. And a lot of times there's even written contracts for that in place. So, something people need to consider on private property.
I will say that I tend to lean more towards him being honest about exercising only because of the earbuds. And here's why I say that is because anybody who is up to criminal activity, I would expect would want to be able to hear if anybody's
coming. Yeah.
The fact that he had earbuds in that he has to, but again, the police officers, it's not fair to say he didn't pay attention to it. I don't know whether he did or whether he didn't, but armchair quarterback in it, that's something that stood out to me was like, well, if he was trying to break into stuff, it's kind of early, right? I mean, there's a lot of cars in the parking lot. To me, if you're going to focus on the totality of the circumstances, it's like, well, he's not alone. So surely if he was going to do something nefarious in front of, in a place where there were all these cars, he wouldn't have earbuds in, right?
And maybe probably his wouldn't wear
kind of weird, but maybe he's got a trash bag. He's trying to lose weight. We don't know. I think it lends itself more towards he's probably telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And again, though, I still think that seeing someone running away from an area you don't typically see people running in, and you've also had complaints about people doing stuff in that area, I could see where this officer would want to make contact.
Sure.
Not saying, anything beyond that. They probably don't have the lawful authority to do much beyond that, but it makes sense at least why he would talk to this guy. And the guy's immediate reaction to the cop saying, well, we've had people doing stuff over there is all bullshit. You're just harassing me. And I don't think that was necessarily called for just yet anyway,
Well, I don't really it seems to me like they got some history. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too far into it.
Well, he did. I'll say this. When he uploaded his form, he named one of the officers, which is Sergeant Jania Smith. I don't know if that's the officer whose body camera we're watching, but that's the only name he included in the thing. So I guess as we watch this, we can look out for.
Yeah, for sure. How long is the video?
Smith. I think it's like 8 minutes.
Okay.
It's not that long. Yeah.
And you got your explanation, so I'm leaving and going in.
What's your identity?
None of your business.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
You're obstructing governmental operations.
Bullshit.
You are.
You're just trying to stop me.
No,
so you
I'm
get
not.
my fucking name. Yeah, that's
No.
all you're doing.
Why do I? That doesn't make any sense.
You just
man.
want to know what I'm doing. I'm going in the store, end of story. That's all I'm doing. I've done
Identify
nothing
yourself.
wrong.
You're going to be placed under arrest.
You can't put me under
Yes,
arrest.
I can. You're
No, you
obstructing
can't.
governmental operations.
How?
Let me back up just a little bit here.
Make any
You
sense,
just
man.
want to know what I'm doing. I'm going in the store, end of story. That's all I'm doing.
Right. So he tells him he's going to charge him with obstruction for not IDing.
Yeah. Obstruction of the governmental operations.
Yeah, and this was in Arkansas. I don't know Arkansas's obstruction
Well, I'll look it up.
statute off the top of my head. While you're doing that, I'll say that it seems like a bit, let's set aside whether or not the officer would have the authority to do that. Just threatening someone like that with that kind of a threat, like I'm going to arrest you just because basically, essentially, I want to, is what he's really saying to that person. And that's how this individual is interpreting that. Just like part of that, the elements of like, just be a decent human first and be a cop second, I think that are getting, we're getting all that mixed up in the world of police culture,
Yeah, I agree with that.
You find it?
But let's see. Knowingly obstruct, impairs or hinders the performance of any government function, knowingly refuses to provide to a government agency relating to investigation of a case for child support or Social Security, fails to submit to court order scientific testing, falsely identifies to law enforcement.
So yeah, it does sound kind of vague. Tim said.
I don't think that applies to this situation.
Yeah. Also, we have to contend with the fact that this cop almost certainly doesn't have reasonable suspicion right now.
Well, it depends on what he saw. So that's the issue.
That's true.
If he does have reasonable suspicion, if the court were to determine that he did have reasonable suspicion under the circumstances, because again, this actually gets litigated in the courtroom, not on the street, right? So if it turns out that he did have RAS, that will be the difference between whether he's guilty of not IDing or whether he's not. You know what I mean?
It's crazy how in that moment they can use something that is going to become a big part of the case later as such a chip to advance things in the moment. But all right, well, let's see where it goes, I guess.
I've done
Identify
nothing
yourself.
wrong.
You're going to be placed under arrest.
You can't put me under
Yes,
arrest.
I can. You're
No, you
obstructing
can't.
governmental operations.
How?
You're obstructing governmental
How?
operations.
Because you asked me to identify myself?
Put your hands on your bed.
Wow.
If you'll
Yeah,
just
that's
tell me your
great.
identity, man, we can go from there. Where's your ID at? All right, man. I don't understand why you got to be that way.
Government obstruction
Huh?
my ass.
You live here?
You're going to get an arrest before the end of the month?
No.
You're going to get your little bonus?
Little bonus.
Yeah, go fuck yourself, dude.
All right, man.
He's talking mad shit.
What's your name and
Yeah.
badge number?
Corporal Jonas Smith, I'm the supervisor on shift on PD7.
Okay.
You got a corporal as a supervisor.
Yeah, they do an acting supervisor if they're the senior corporal and the
PD7
sergeant's out.
dispatch, I'm 1015.
They just pay them the difference in their pay for
Man,
the
this
night.
could all be avoided. I don't understand.
Who the fuck I am?
Huh?
Nothing, I'm doing nothing wrong.
I don't understand
So
why you
far,
don't want
this
to
looks to me like
identify yourself.
a
I have lawful reason to be out.
Clear-cut Fourth Amendment violation. Like,
Yeah.
it depends on truly what he saw. But again, based on my reading of Arkansas law, I don't see how it doesn't seem to be that just refusing to ID is criminalized under its own statute unless there's other obstructive conduct. And so I think that what we have here is we have a situation that would be a viable Fourth Amendment complaint that he killed by pleading guilty to something.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he did also tell me that I think he was pro se in that federal case as well.
Well, probably because the police, whoever he sat down with is going to say, yeah, you probably had a Fourth Amendment violation, but you pled guilty to this.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with that is I'm wondering if he had a public defender for his criminal charges that, and that's why he ultimately took a plea
That's a good
deal.
thing for us to talk about at some point too, because there's a lot that gets made of ineffective assistance of counsel. That is a very specific meaning under the law. So
Yeah,
we can discuss that, right?
Yeah, I remember we actually had a private discussion about that before where you sort of changed a lot of my sentiments about that. But yeah, we'll talk about that after this video because that's a good conversation.
Because I don't have one reason
You
to stop
absolutely
me
do.
for no goddamn reason.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you fucking did.
Calm down.
Just to be clear, I think this is 100% a violation of the
I
Fourth
don't understand,
Amendment.
man. This could all be avoided.
What, because you want to know my fucking name?
Yeah. You're running from the equipment over there.
Bullshit.
When I pull over here to get out with you, start running across the parking
Yeah,
lot.
because I'm trying to get over here to the goddamn store is what I'm doing.
So you were
And
going
you
to run
seem to
through
have a
this
big
way?
fucking issue about it.
You were running from the equipment.
Bullshit! I came from the dead road from a fucking shortcut so I didn't have to walk around the goddamn curve.
So when I pull over here, you automatically
Yeah.
stop, turn around, and start
I
running
did.
at a dead sprint across the parking lot to where
so
I have to
can
flip
get
on my
over
blue
here.
lights for you to
So I
stop.
can get over here.
And you're eventually...
That is not... I didn't do nothing.
All right, man. We're going to jail for obstructing governmental operations. I'll figure out who you are if I have to fingerprint you or whatever. Not very nice. All could have been avoided.
No, it couldn't.
My fucking name. Fuck you.
I love this shit.
Let me tell you why it couldn't have been avoided. Because him giving you his name would not have established whether there was a fucking crime. That, by the way, all we have to do is pay attention to what didn't happen. Do you see any follow-up investigation taking place to figure out what equipment was fucked with? Do you see whether there's anything missing? Are they contacting a key holder to figure out who owns this equipment and whether anything's missing? Hey guys, you want to come down here and look and check and see whether anything's been taken? Absolutely fucking not. Which means they didn't have anything to begin with. Right? Yeah. They're not following up, trying to establish his connection to this crime that didn't exist.
Yeah, in their mind, the problem's solved by him being arrested. That's it. Problem solved. The problem was he wasn't arrested.
By keeping one jogger off the street.
Yeah. Oh.
Gosh, I don't know what the deal was.
This is the part of the video I've
I
seen.
don't understand his issue. There we go.
Now, just to be clear with the audience, this individual told me that I could use their name in this video. They don't mind, but I intentionally edited it out because I didn't know, how this interaction was going to go, how we would characterize it. I just don't want them to feel like we're disparaging them for no reason.
No, we didn't include their name to prove the point that their name didn't matter then.
Yeah, that's that too, I guess. And we're making a point without even knowing it.
We're bringing it home. We're bringing the point home that it didn't matter then and it doesn't matter now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to remain a private citizen after this.
P7 dispatch, I have one by name, date of birth. What do you think? Stand by. Last name, first name. I don't know if he's got
it doesn't,
warrants
Judy, and they'll never know since they didn't do an investigation.
Yeah, seriously.
I pulled into like GameStop right there. I was just gonna pull out and get out with him because I didn't know if he's exercising or what, but he ran from that equipment. He stops and starts running across the parking lot through Murphy's after he sees me.
So it sounds like what predicated this stop was really the evasive maneuvers.
Yes, it's I'll chase him because he's running, which is not legal.
No. Yeah, you can just run by a cop. You don't, and I believe that there's actually a SCOTUS case that specifically says that flight alone is not enough to meet reasonable suspicion.
There's actually some really good 10th Circuit precedent on this. I can't remember the case. No, I think there's a Supreme Court case on flight alone.
Yeah.
Even flight coupled with a high crime area.
Yes, that's exactly what came to my mind as well.
Yeah.
There is a case that deals with that, but I can't recall the name.
There's even a case in the 10th Circuit that was where these two dudes were standing beside each other. They had RAS for one and not RAS for the other, and they said that the RAS could not transfer by virtue of their proximity too.
Interesting.
If what he just explained was the entire reasonable suspicion, it wasn't even reasonably suspicious.
No. It was just a guy running, and he may, from his perspective, he may have never even seen the cop when he decided to change directions or whatever. You don't know what's going on from that guy's perspective.
Right. And the thing is, I actually am convinced that the only thing they're investigating out here is who is going to comply and who's not. I think
that's a fair characterization. There's a lot of videos that would be a testament to the sentiment that cops can't investigate shit.
Yeah. And one of your commenters here, Mokagent, I don't know how to say that, but it's Wardlow is the case. And
got it.
But now what he just posted about the Wardlow decision was that it's a relevant factor. But I believe if you read Wardlow, it actually says that alone is not enough.
Yes,
I might be wrong about that.
I think you're right. almost certain that you're right, that it is saying yes, location and proximity, all of these variables that come into play when determining reasonable suspicion can be used as articulable facts, but you still have to justify those facts, with an observation or a criminal element.
Yeah.
So they can be considered, but they can't stand alone. They have to be accompanied.
So what it says under Illinois versus Wardlow, it says flight alone is not per se enough to justify a Terry stop, but unprovoked flight in a high crime area can be a significant factor that supports reasonable suspicion when combined with context. So the Supreme Court held headlong flight wherever it occurs is the consummate act of evasion. It is not necessarily indicative of wrongdoing, but it is certainly suggestive of such. So unprovoked flight in a high crime area equals a relevant factor, but flight alone with no context is not automatically enough. And I think if you take that holding and you apply it to these situations, I believe what we have is a person who was independently running before the police noticed him. The police noticed that he was running and automatically assumed some nefarious intent based on that. And I don't think that this qualifies as a Wardlow situation.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
Distinguishable from Wardlow.
The way he characterized what happened was that he saw the guy as he was running. He was already running.
Right.
So I don't know how you could just because now you noticed him, you're assigning the evasive aspect to that, which is
and why would you run across a well-lit parking lot when the stores are still open if you were with earbuds in, if you were committing a crime,
Yeah.
So this was I actually, knowing nothing else about this case, I think this is a case that would have been a slam dunk Fourth Amendment case, and he fucked himself by pleading guilty. That's what I believe happened.
Yeah. Well, let's play it out. Maybe there's a reason he ultimately submitted.
Maybe he beats ass off the police officer and instructs him.
He doesn't identify himself or anything like that after I'm telling him why I'm out with him. I don't have a lawful reason, and I'm telling him to instruct him if he's not providing out his identity. I just need to figure out what's going on. 10-4. I'll be 10-15 with him. I don't understand. There was no reason to do any of that.
Just don't like the polos right now.
I was literally going to say, hey man, you running from that equipment? We just had equipment broken into, I don't understand, man.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
I don't know why you don't
Because I
like
didn't tell you my goddamn name. You're fucking arresting me. Go fuck yourself.
All right.
That's good. That was good. Well, by the way, the jury would hate him too, so that's another reason why an Arkansas lawyer might
You're also being arrested for fleeing.
Well, let me say this, because I'm glad I have someone like you on here to add credence to this perspective, because this is something that I get flack for a lot on ATA, and that is like telling or grading down when people act like belligerent assholes in the middle of an encounter. And the reason that I consider that in the grading rubric is because of the impact that it can have on your potential case in the future. It can be a very divisive and a difficult variable to get over when you're dealing with a jury of your peers or, a judge who is very, obviously pro status. I think that a lot of people confuse me saying you shouldn't act this way or do this thing as a condemnation of free speech in some way, but it's really just practical advice.
Well, it's just like the conversation about effective assistance of counsel. What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? If you were trying to accomplish true accountability, you can't do it by being a dickhead on the street because the jury will not give you any money. And it's not me. I'm just telling you based on my experience. If the jury dislikes you, they won't care that the police violated your rights. They'll want the police to have violated your rights more. I've had grand jury members asking me why they weren't arrested for A, B, C, or D when those weren't even crimes. They were just talking back to the police, right? People don't understand. People in this space specifically do not understand that. Look, I was curious about this. I looked on one of my tools and looked at our various views. Brandon Tatum gets more views than the civil rights lawyer on a monthly basis over the last 12 months. And the civil rights lawyer gets more views than any other channel that I know of in this space.
Yeah.
that should be evidence enough to anybody who is paying attention that there are way more people who support the police and don't like this sort of stuff than there are people who consume sort of, I would say, negative police content.
Yeah, at least the alternative perspective.
And those people are the people that are going to be on the jury.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and no, don't forget that, there is a selection process to the jury, that like there's a lot of intentionality behind who gets to be a juror. And, so there's so many variables that come into play outside the just human nature aspects of this to consider too. So there's never a situation where it's ultimately going to benefit you to be an asshole to the cops.
Yeah, I can't. Well, like I said, it depends on what your
yeah, that's true. If you intend to file a lawsuit, I should add that caveat.
Well, the other thing, like, what if you're in a place where you want to hold your own community accountable and you want to make it clear, like, think about bullying, right? You don't necessarily win the fight with the bully, but you give him enough that he doesn't want anymore and he goes pick somebody else. So what's your goal? Or you want to have to fight this guy every single time you want to exist in your town. So you want to make yourself a hard target. Okay, fine. It's just that you're not going to be able to use your objectives for that and overlap them with getting a lawsuit victory,
Right. And that I think is one of the biggest things that the entire auditing community has really not understood. Like there's a distinction between getting retribution in the moment for your video or whatever it may be, and then actually making meaningful change at some point in your community or in policing or your department or whatever. There's a big difference in how you accomplish those goals. And that the fact that the auditing community hasn't really focused so much on the change aspect, the literal change aspect, opens them up for a wide array of critiques about what they're actually doing and what their mission really is. But all right, almost done with this one.
Shit, because you weren't even planning on stopping me until you flipped your.
I absolutely was planning on stopping you.
Go fuck yourself, dude. Oh my god.
I don't know what you got against law enforcement, but
everything
sounds like you have a pretty bad issue.
Stop is what it was, dude. Unreasonable. And then you flip your fucking lights on when I'm trying to get across the street. Fuck you.
Jaywalking across the street.
Bullshit, because there's no fucking pedestrian signal things anywhere, so I can walk across this fucking street.
Listen, man, you were walking from this equipment.
Listen, you unlawfully fucking arrested me. And I'm not.
But listen,
no.
You'll have a court date of January.
What's your name again? What's your name again?
Corporal Smith will be on the ticket.
Corporal Smith, and what's your goddamn badge number?
PD7. This isn't the internet.
What?
PD7. This isn't the internet. You can fight it in court.
Yeah, I sure fucking will.
I think that's actually good advice.
Yeah, it's just the only thing is the officer is gaslighting, acting like he's a victim because now it's just a target on law enforcement back.
Yeah.
There's no accountability for the fact that he's absolutely 100% wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point.
14, can you go check that equipment?
Oh,
now they do the
investigation.
Yeah.
We don't know if we have a fucking crime yet, but we created one out of whole cloth.
Yeah, and now we're doing the investigation retroactively. Again, like it's almost every stream at this point, chat. It's almost every stream that we get this where someone's already arrested by the time they begin the fucking investigation.
And this is another thing that makes this a perfect Fourth Amendment case absent his behavior. And again, before you crucify me, I'm not saying that his behavior negates the violation. I'm saying that it is a hindrance to his collecting any money or the nominal damages. But think about this: reasonable articulable suspicion sufficient to conduct a Terry detention is based on what the officer knew at the time. If you don't check the fucking equipment until 20 minutes after you've tried to ID him and arrested him for something that you had to know before you stopped him, then that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Absolutely 100% slam dunk. This is an easy lawsuit.
Yep.
Except
the rhetoric or the personal feelings in the moment.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Except it didn't, Taylor, because he pled guilty.
Well, that's fine, man. That's part of an investigation. You wouldn't comply with the investigation.
Yeah. We're
I mean, we
investigating
are
your
done. There's
complaint,
nothing,
and you failed.
nothing more to discuss. I don't understand.
See, that's the thing is they think that like getting your ID is the first step of an investigation. That
And
it
the worst-
seems to be.
And let me tell you, I've been wanting to bring this up. It's never going to change. Have you figured out? Have you looked into the Koberger thing at all?
No.
Okay.
What is that?
The Idaho murders, the 4 college student murders in Idaho.
No, I haven't even heard of that.
You didn't hear about the 4 college student murders in Idaho? Good
Nope.
God. What you been doing? Running 7 YouTube channels? Okay. So the Koberger thing, and people are going to get pissed about this. Brace yourselves, darlings. You're going to find out information that you're not going to be happy about. Koberger is the criminology PhD student who was a Washington State PhD student who murdered 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho, which is where University of Idaho, I think, is. He was absolutely random as far as we know. He was absolutely unknown to them. He stalked and murdered all 4 of them. The way they caught him, though, was that they did a traffic stop on him and identified him like 4 months earlier. Okay. So whenever, and if I'm not wrong, I'm not sure exactly the circumstances, but what I want to say is, I want to say that this was not there was something that would have been questionable at the traffic stop, but he stopped and ID'd Koberger. Either he was a passenger or it was for something else. But anyway, they stopped and ID'd Koberger. 4 months later, in this small town of Moscow, Idaho, they all of a sudden need to know some information about this random white Hyundai that has been traveling through here. And it was only because they had stopped him and identified him 4 months earlier on a traffic stop that they were able to connect him to the crime scene. Turns out the way they connected him forensically to these murders was he ordered a knife off of Amazon that was like a K-bar knife. And his DNA, he left the sheath behind after he killed them. And his DNA was on the snap, on the button of the knife sheath. Okay.
Wow.
And then they were able to run that through one of these MyHeritage or random DNA registries and figure out that the father of the person that left that DNA on the knife sheath was this person in Pennsylvania. They went and snagged the fucking garbage out from the curb. They went and snagged his computer forensic data and found him buying a replacement knife sheath off Amazon to match that K-bar. And all of that was tied back to them. So that is the answer. If you want to know the truth, that's the reason that they want everybody in a database so that if and when something ever happens, they are able to connect somebody to it. That's the reason. And that's why the public will largely support it forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. Just the fact that they connected his genetic data to some outside source like that is scary. Yep. That's insane. What? Granted, look, I'm glad they caught the murderer. You know, like that's a good thing. But
me too. But the difference between me and you is that we would rather see a bunch of Brian Kobergers go free than to give up our freedoms so they can solve one homicide. But 85-90% of America, this is just me talking out of my ass, is completely fine with giving up that level of freedom in the hopes of catching a Brian Koberger.
Yeah, no one considers the slippery slope that, is paved by actions like that. And yeah, that's the nuance of these types of interactions is something we're definitely losing, over time with the way that we've just allowed police officers to continue doing shit like this. Well, let's wrap this one up and then we'll do like a Q&A or something.
You won't invite me to this shit again unless you want to make a comment.
No, this has been great.
Better get my phone call.
That's up to the jail. Separate institution, agency, the 9.
Okay. The black and white. So we were at the end of that.
Yeah.
There we go. So this is the report that was detailed with this interaction. And I know you probably can't see it very well. I can read some of the highlights, I guess, of this. This took place at 9:55, as you can see in the body camera footage. And he said Sergeant Jania Smith, but now I'm seeing in this report, it's saying Corporal Jania Smith. So I guess that was the officer's body camera footage we were watching.
Well, Smith, I hope you're watching. You got a sissy freaking name. All right. You were supposed to be a Jenny. Anyway.
So he was checking a business as well as heavy equipment that's parked at the entrance to a closed down road that was formerly Market Street. So I'm assuming that was public property where this equipment was and probably where that guy was coming from. So he checked the equipment, and then he observed a tall, slender male subject wearing a red hoodie with the hood up walk out from behind the equipment. See, this is the part I didn't see him checking any equipment. And as a matter of fact, we heard him call for another officer to go check the equipment. I'm immediately not really trusting this narrative, just based on what was
But he also said, remember, they're stuck with what they say it doesn't matter as far as their justification is concerned, but it matters for establishing a record. If you can box them into a testimony, you can at least highlight challenges to their credibility by saying, well, wait a minute though. I mean, you said here on your body cam that you saw him running from the equipment. Were you there? How far away from the equipment were you? Were you 50 yards from the equipment? What do you suspect that he did to the equipment? Did you suspect that he smuggled a goddamn bulldozer under his hoodie? Like, what exactly were you suspicious that he did? He wasn't operating the bulldozer. Did you think he was going to make off with it?
Yeah, that's a good
What did
question.
you think he did? So what crime are you investigating? And then if you check the equipment, what did you observe? And why did you have to send somebody back to check it if you'd already checked it?
That's the biggest question, because that's plainly apparent on the footage that they did some kind of additional checking of the equipment afterwards. So and that doesn't make any sense. I wonder if it says anything about that in this narrative. So due to recent thefts involving heavy equipment and contractors' vehicles in the area. Oh, so he does say Corporal Smith attempted to make contact with the subject by parking his vehicle approximately 20 to 30 yards away from the subject in the direction he was jogging. But the male subject stopped jogging, paused for a brief moment, and then ran across the street in the traffic way in the opposite direction. The subject did not use a crosswalk. This was due to the subject not using the proper crosswalk at the intersection of Rogers and Market Street. So he's saying here that there was actually a crosswalk available.
But you glossed over. I'm not saying you did this intentionally, but you were reading it. So I was critically thinking about it while you were reading it. Yeah. He added that bullshit jaywalking justification at the back end of the narrative that he came up with on the ride to the station.
He did come up with that. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, well, now, and let's be clear about this. That's what a lot of people don't understand. The courts don't care what the actual officer did at the time. What they do is they say, what did the officer know at the time? Okay, this is and then they remove the subjective lens from that officer and they take the objective lens of an objectively reasonable police officer, and then they put on that lens and take the information that officer knew at the time, and that's the standard that they applied. If an objectively reasonable police officer would have observed that jaywalking or whatever, all that bullshit, and tied all that together, if you want to have your mind blown, go read the opinion where John Bryan lost that AR-15 stop and ID case out of Putnam County, West Virginia. And I don't remember the guy's name, but Brian Donahoe stopped him and demanded ID because he was walking with an AR-15 on his back going coyote hunting. And he's epileptic. He didn't drive. He didn't have any ID. He was just a guy in a carry state walking with an open carry AR-15 absolutely legally. And the court did so much mental gymnastics to try to say that, well, there was a school nearby, an objectively reasonable police officer might have thought A, B, C, or D. If you want to have your mind blown, go read that opinion that he posted on his website, because that will tell you the links that the courts are willing to go to justify an officer's conduct based on the objectively reasonable police officer standard after the fact.
No, I mean, I can give you some specific examples about that as well, because when I was researching the use of force in the McNeil case, I came across two pretty significant cases in the 11th Circuit that were basically dictating what is and isn't unreasonable force. And there was a case where they had a guy who they had put in handcuffs. He was laying down on the ground on his belly, handcuffed, and the cop couldn't pick him up to literally move him into the car. He was basically doing the most passive resistance you possibly can.
Yeah.
And the cop ended up tasing him 3 different times while he was laying on the ground handcuffed, and the courts ruled that a legitimate use of force. So yeah,
What
there's a
was
lot
the
of
idea
that.
that the police officer had to move him? It wasn't like it was an option for him to stay there. And because he was so big, the only way to do that was to compel his compliance. Was that their justification?
Yeah, essentially. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could see where that is a testament, I think, to the hoops that they'll jump through to justify obvious
Yeah.
bullshit like that, you know?
Yeah, no, they will. And it also depends, like the Leon case, right? It depends on what's at stake for them suppressing. If they've suppressing a lot of coke or methamphetamine or a body, they're willing to do it. If they've got courts love to not be responsible for things. They love to punt on issues. They love to just take one little narrow thing and say, we're not saying that this applies to everything. We're only applies to this, you know?
Yeah, you know, that's the whole critique of fucking qualified immunity. You know,
Absolutely.
no one is saying that we don't need qualified immunity. You know, I think that we do
Lots of people
need
say
it.
that.
Well,
nobody who
you know,
really understands nobody
exactly.
who really understands that qualified immunity is good if it were not abused.
Yeah, if it just served the purpose that it was intended to serve, it would not be a contentious issue.
Right.
You know, but the courts have just turned that into a weapon at this point.
Yeah, well, qualified immunity also protects the guy that comes out and accidentally backs over your mailbox when he's trying to read your meter too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about the cops. It's about the reasonable mistakes that get made in the course of government employment. It just gets abused and exacerbated under the police, misusing it. And that's where we always hear about it. But
people forget that it applies to all government employees. It's not exclusive to police.
Right, exactly.
Well, I think we pretty much got this interaction covered. We only have so much time left, so I'm just going to go ahead and transition into a bit of a Q&A section, or at least some
I want to talk about the ineffective assistance of counsel thing just for a second.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Queue up, load up your questions. But I would just say that when you look at an ineffective assistance of counsel, you have to remember that the civil legal system, because I don't remember who it was here, so I don't mean to steal your idea, but it is a legal system. It's not a justice system. To give you that shout out, like, that's true. It is a legal system. It's not a justice system, because justice is subjective, right? It means different things to different people. But what I was going to say is that the civil system and the criminal system are completely different. They're not overlapped. They don't connect. Different lawyers do civil law than do criminal law. When I'm sitting down with a person and I'm advising them about the legal ramifications of whether or not they plead or go to trial or whatever, I'm not talking to them about what effect that could have on their civil case. My job is not to advise them on their civil case. Now, I do that because I like being thorough. And if I'm your lawyer, I feel like it's my job to talk to you about every possible risk. But this is the 100% truth. If a person is sitting in jail and they don't want to be sitting in jail, they will plead to the Kennedy assassination and sign up for 10 years of probation if it means they get to walk out of jail. Because guess what? Jail fucking sucks. Okay? You're sleeping on concrete. You're staring up at lights that they won't turn off. You got three people throwing cups of shit and piss on you. And you get to look forward to one day a week when you get a shitty honey bun that was, expired 6 months before it made it into the jail, right? It's a shitty place. And people will plead guilty to get out of jail because they don't have the money to bond out. So it's not necessarily ineffective assistance of counsel because you advised your client and they chose to plead guilty in order to get it. You may have told them, I can beat this, but you're the one that's going to have to sit. I can't come up with $10,000 to bond you out, but this looks to me like it's a slam dunk violation of Rodriguez. Here's the problem. It's going to be another week. You're in jail now. So that means that you're not going to be on the docket until next week. And I have to be able to, I have 14 days that I can demand a hearing. That means that they've got 14 days to get their witnesses in. So if you want to have a hearing and take a chance on getting this dismissed, you've got to be willing to sit here for 14 days. Are you willing to sit here for 14 days? Because if you are, let's do it. We'll make them prove their case. But more than likely, you're going to take this 1129 that's going to be a misdemeanor plead, and your civil suit's going to go out the window.
Yeah, and this is an aspect that people don't really talk about. That's abused in sort of a practical way when it comes to like DUIs, for example. A lot of people will just comply with a field sobriety test because the consequence for that is losing your license temporarily until you can actually prove that you weren't involved in a DUI. You don't have your license until you go to court and figure it out, which could take even longer, you know?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing. And the DUIs are something that, like, people get really mad about this because they're like, oh my God, what DUIs, get them off the street. Okay, fine. Like, I get it. But there's a much greater likelihood that you're going to be affected negatively by being unlawfully arrested than you are by getting hit by a DUI driver, you know?